Spider-Man No Way Home. So I'm watching and listening to a lot of reviewers watch this movie and praise how great it is. And every time they talk about the movie, they're really talking about all the scenes that bring back nostalgic feelings for them. And I gotta ask them, are you sure you like the movie? Or are you watching the movie with your nostalgic glasses on? What I need you guys to do is either stop and think about the movie for a second or go back and watch it again, this time like a reviewer. I did not think that this was a good movie. I didn't think it was a great movie. I thought it was an okay movie. It was fine. I'm tired of people grading Marvel movies on a curve. I'm betting right now that this movie will be the Force Awakens of the Marvel movies. Everyone will say that it's great right now, but then a year from now, people are going to be writing long YouTube essays about how it sucks. So let's get started. Spider-Man No Way Home starts off from where Far From Home ended. Everyone on the planet knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because Mysterio revealed his identity to the public, goes to ask Doctor Strange to make a spell to help everyone forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Peter messes with the spell, causing people who know Peter Parker from the multiverse to show up. Peter is tasked with helping capture them. He then gets into a disagreement with Doctor Strange, traps him in the mirror dimension. I'm going to talk about this in my rant in a second because this is really annoying to me. And Peter brings the villains to his home. He tries to cure them. He cures Doc Ock, and then they decide they don't want to be cured. They attack Peter, destroying the building. In the process, killing Aunt May. Ned and MJ see this on TV, so they try to find Peter using the sling ring that Spider-Man took off of Doctor Strange. This opens a portal to the other Peter Parkers, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. They all team up, take down the villains, while Doctor Strange is trying to contain the spell from earlier. Tom's Peter asks Doctor Strange to use the spell to have everyone forget about Peter Parker, and that's pretty much how the movie ends. So I do have one problem that's not really a rant per se, but I do have an issue with this and I do want to talk about it. So Aunt May finally breaks up with Happy because she got a chance to clean out her contact lens to see what she was dating. But that's not the real reason she broke up. She broke up with him because it was going to be hard to explain to Peter, who was sleeping on Happy's couch after his identity is revealed, why Happy is very happy with his Aunt May, because she ain't gonna be sleeping on the couch, dog. She's gonna be sleeping in the room with Big Daddy. That's all I'm saying. She's not finna sleep on the couch. I mean, you guys gotta earn your payment here. It ain't free. You know what I'm saying? That was probably like a small thing I had a problem with. But because Aunt May, Peter had a lot of money problems, right? And I felt like Aunt May could have solved 95% of them by starting an OnlyFans. But she's almost 60, but she's still fine, bro. She still looks good, bro. Shout out to Aunt Bay, bro. But okay, let's get started on the rant for real. So at the end of Far From Home, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, practically destroys London with his drones, and Mysterio outs him as Spider-Man. And essentially, he was going to have to deal with the repercussions of being considered possibly a terrorist. But this movie was like, no, shh, don't worry about that. It's nothing. It doesn't even mean anything. Like, just shh. I mean... like they literally make it such a non-issue that he's not worried about like other villains finding about his identity. He's more worried about getting into college because he gets rejected by MIT. And I'm like, you might want to think about this a little bit more, because like you're the only Avenger that I feel like that lives in a neighborhood where you actively stop a lot of crime. And it's not like you're Captain America, where he pretty much travels internationally to deal with issues and then he comes back home and he's fine. You literally are living in a neighborhood of the people who rob the banks or rob the bodegas or whatever, so they could probably end up coming back to get you, especially if everyone in the neighborhood knows who you are. I felt like another problem I had with this movie, I felt like it was telling you about how important college is, which is, it's not true. College is not so important anymore. And I had another question. Why did Peter ask Doctor Strange to help everyone forget that he is Spider-Man just to get him into college? I felt like it had to be much more bigger repercussions than that. because I felt like he could have asked Doctor Strange for a spell to help him get into college, and I think that the entire movie would have been fine. Like he created a bigger issue by asking essentially the wrong question. Why didn't they plan out the spell a little bit more? You know, I felt like he could have talked about what he needed. He did it way too last second. Like, I felt like Doctor Strange was kind of an idiot. Thank God he's not Sorcerer Supreme anymore. Shout out to Wong. I also had another problem that Zendaya had a magical box that can make all the enemies disappear in the movie, but she never uses it or, you know, thinks about using it even after she finds out on TV that his aunt had died. Like, that's not, I would have pressed that button as soon as I heard that there was an explosion happening at his building. I would assume that he was in danger, and I would have probably just pressed the button immediately to get rid of those people. So I just kind of had a problem with that. I also had a problem with Doctor Strange being stuck in the mirror dimension. It made no sense to me. So it was never really established that you needed the sling ring to go into the mirror dimension. I just assumed that you can do it without it, and I thought the sling ring was more of a teleportation thing or a transport device, and it didn't necessarily help you get into the mirror dimension. But he was stuck not in the Grand Canyon, but in the mirror dimension in the Grand Canyon. And I was kind of like, okay, that's a little weird, but you know, we can ignore that, I guess. And another thing I also had a problem with, Peter decides that he wants to cure all the villains, right? And he's like, I'm gonna cure you guys before I send you back to your universe or whatever. And the first thing he does is he brings them to where he's staying. Like, that makes no sense. Why would you do that? Why would you bring every single one of your villains back to where you were staying? In fact, it may have been easier if he had just brought the equipment that he needed to them, because when you see the equipment that he's using, everything comes out of this magical box that can do whatever, and that box doesn't look too heavy. He probably could carry it over there. He probably could swing it over there. No issues, no problem. But he brought all of them to his apartment when Aunt May is there. He didn't even like text her to say, hey, you know what? You need to get out of the building, stay out for the day, just go chill at the park, go get some ice cream, you know, go hang out at your new boyfriend's house, something. I also had a problem with why the villains suddenly become villainy again, because that part also didn't make any sense, because after they cure Doc Ock, then Spider-Man's spider sense just starts tingling like crazy, and then he just turns around and he like webs Norman Osborn. And I don't think the speech was great that he gave to like rally up the villains to go, okay, maybe the speech wasn't that good. Maybe that's what it was. But I just didn't feel like they had a good enough reason to suddenly decide, you know what, I think we want to stay villains. It just didn't even make any sense. Specifically for like the Sandman. Like, it didn't even seem like he was a villain as much he was mildly concerned, and the fact that he doesn't trust this current Peter Parker because he doesn't know who he is. Because he's seen his face and he doesn't recognize him. It's a different Peter. So I kind of had a problem with that. I thought that was weird. And I also had a problem that Ned is suddenly opening and closing portals with zero effort, but then as soon as the plot needs it, he can't close a portal. They don't really explain that. I mean, he barely knows how to use his powers anyway, but he didn't seem to have a problem opening and closing the portals when he was getting Spider-Man and the other Spider-Man there. So I guess we're just gonna ignore that. I also found it interesting that the Green Goblin was way more interested into Tom's Spider-Man than he was his own Spider-Man. Like, you would think you would have more of an interaction with Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, but it didn't really come off like that. I also had a problem with how he showed up after all three of the villains were cured. That doesn't make any sense. What really should have happened there is that he should have not been there, because he was specifically tracking down the box, right? So they actually have two locations towards the end. There's this high school where they were doing all the experiments to be able to cure the villains, and then there is the Statue of Liberty, and Ned has a portal that's circling in between them. So I thought the villains were going to be there to distract the Spider-Man, right? And then the Goblin was actually going to spend his time tracking down the box that can be used to send them back at any point in time. That's something that I would think that he would be interested in doing. That as soon as he gets the location and he starts blowing up things at the school, they were going to run into the portal to escape from the Green Goblin, right? That's what I thought the plan was going to be, but it ended up being much more confusing. Like, he just shows up at the end, and I didn't think that made any sense. Like, what were you doing? the entire time while everybody else, because it was a 3-on-3, kind of effectively a 3-on-3 fight at that time. And him being there, I think that it would have turned the tables just a little to be able to, have them win in their favor, or at least make the Spider-Man be put at a disadvantage where it would seem like more of a greater threat. But here's another thing that I'm also having a problem with. A lot of other reviewers, right? What they're doing when they review this movie is they're ignoring a bunch of plot points. They're ignoring a bunch of situations so they can say, hey, this was a great movie. But had this movie been any other movie, they would not have given it the benefit of the doubt. Well, I'll put it this way. If a movie was to be made where a hero goes through his own hero journey, he loses to the villains in the second act, and then in the third act, 2 random people show up to help him solve all the problems in the third act, who the hell are these people? Why did they show up? Why are they here to help? I feel like every single time you go, hey, what's going on here? Like, the entire movie could have been put up to the Captain America meme where he basically is saying, I get that reference, except they kind of do that throughout the whole movie. They sprinkle it throughout the whole movie. I didn't effectively have a problem with it, but I felt like they kept using it to distract you from specific plot points. So I didn't like that. And I'm watching the movie, I'm just like, you guys wouldn't do this if it was any other movie. Can you guys actually sit down and review it like an actual movie? Don't talk about how this is your nostalgia trip and you're so happy to see the other Peters. I'm happy to see them too, but I would have been happier if they showed up earlier in the movie, fit into the plot point, weave a story around them, instead of them going, oh, they'll just show up at the end. Everybody knows who they are. We don't have to explain anything. We don't have to explain what they were doing. Like, I just didn't like that. Maybe have them show up when he's on the bridge. When he's on the bridge fighting Doc Ock and Green Goblin shows up, have them show up. Or you could have had a twist in the movie where the villains are helping Peter fight the other Spider-Man, at least in the beginning, because he's not sure. That could have been a good twist, but nah, it was basically very one-sided. What I did like about the movie was the fight scene between Green Goblin and Spider-Man at his home, how they were just breaking stuff, and then Green Goblin doesn't need a mask anymore. He is the Green Goblin, and he's just crazy, and I love that. And then I loved how everyone cheered when the other Spider-Man showed up. I also thought Hannibal Buress was funny when he was like, Mysterio was right. I also liked it that Jamie Foxx told Andrew Garfield Spider-Man that he thought he was black. I thought that was kind of funny. I actually liked that they said, with great power comes great responsibility. The movies for the last 10 years have been avoiding it like the plague, and I kind of had a problem with it. As for everyone else's performance, I thought Tobey was the worst of the 3 Spider-Man. He didn't really fit in the movie, but he did get the most cheers when he showed up. I thought Andrew Garfield has a lot of charisma. It was really fun to hear him talk. Of course, Tom was the best Spider-Man, but I wouldn't expect anything less because it was his own movie. Also, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin was great. Willem Dafoe Green Goblin was great when he was on screen, but he wasn't in the movie enough. So Ned Leeds, the actor, I felt like he was changing size throughout the movie. Like he would be bigger in some scenes and then smaller in other scenes. Like whenever there were like close-up shots, he would have a whole jawline and his face would seem smaller, but then when he's further away, he's huge. So it was like really weird. Like his size was super inconsistent. I thought that was kind of weird. Jamie Foxx was really funny, but he definitely wasn't the same Jamie Foxx that was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He definitely wasn't. Because he didn't have the personality. This Jamie Foxx has way more swagger. Like, when you are a nerd and then you suddenly have swag, that doesn't really make any sense to me, because it's one thing already kind of had that personality, but he was just, he just really hard for him to make friends. No, he was like crazy and nerdy and weird, but then as soon as he gets to this universe, boy, swagged out. He got waves now. He's looking good, boy. Charlie Cox showed up. That was the only time that I was actually like, I get that reference. I really like that he was here. I'm very excited to see him in the show. Everybody else was forgettable. I mean, Marissa Tomei, despite me calling her Aunt Bay, when she died, I forgot she was in the movie. I was like, oh, you're here? I thought you was about to leave the building or whatever. Or at least Doc Ock should have helped you leave the building or something. But whatever. It's just that they seemed to just kind of like, oh, she's dead. And then she says, great power comes great responsibility. Just like, yeah, whatever. I don't really care, to be honest with you. Yeah, that was pretty much it for me. Everybody else was forgettable. They were either forgettable or they were okay. They didn't really stand out too much. But this movie, man, it was definitely a solid C+ for me. I can't give it a great rating as a movie. It was fun. It was a very fun movie, but it was not a good movie. It wasn't a great movie. It was an okay movie. And now I'm kind of worried because I'm afraid that Sony will try to make their own Spider-Man movie, and that's going to be a problem because we've seen what they did with Venom, and then we've seen what they did with Venom 2, and I want to see Morbius, but I'm afraid because whenever you put a movie in January, that means you don't like the movie. Like, I don't think they trust the movie to do well, so they just put it in January. So see what they do with that. But I'm your boy Rant, and I'm out.